Yo, what is up everyone? Back here with another video. Today we're going to be going over a certain Pokemon that I think is actually really good in the current format. And I wanted to look at actually some results about like related to this Pokemon to kind of highlight why I think it's specifically good. I think that T-Tar or Tyranitar is specifically a really standout Pokemon because of everything it's been doing lately in the format. And it's had a lot of usage actually. Consistently, it has been doing well in every single match in which it has been seen. Even the team that I used had it, and I did really well with it in the previous Victory Road tournament this weekend. And yeah, it's just been netting really consistent results. So I want to kind of break that down and kind of go through the Pokemon and just kind of discuss that with you guys. So if you guys enjoy the video, as always, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Our question of the day will be, what is your favorite niche Pokemon in BDSP VGC? So make sure to let me know. And yeah, we'll get right into it. So the reason why I wanted to highlight Tyranitar, and specifically one Tyranitar set I was thinking of, is because of how consistent it has been. So let's take a look first at the exhibition match between Germany and Japan. If you guys don't know, these are two very strong regions for VGC, and they had an exhibition match this weekend. And pretty much, as you can see, Tyranitar is very common. I mean, the only teams that didn't have Tyranitar either had a rain mode or had something that could compensate for rain that wasn't Tyranitar. So let's take a look at usage, okay? So at first, we'll see we have Till. He has a Tyranitar on his team, right? Paired next to Garchomp and Cresselia, which is pretty standard, you could say. And then we have another team of Tyranitar, right? From Shota. Now, these teams utilize Tyranitar in the same way, pretty much. You just have it as a bulky setup mon. Typically, it's gonna be using Dragon Dance, which is why I specifically bring up Dragon Dance. The reason why this is also relevant too, and I'm gonna be mentioning this, I just realized I still have this thing up from like when I played a tournament or whatever. But anyways, so pretty much Dragon Dance Tyranitar is just incredibly consistent, and it's good in both battle tower doubles and it's good in both competitive VGC doubles, so double battling, right? So kind of that it works in both because it's a really good setup option. Now obviously, granted, they do function a little bit differently, but it's fairly the same thing, right? And sorry, I had to fix my camera, it was bothering me. You'll see why it's so strong in a minute, but basically you'll see that the compositions typically favor supporting the Tyranitar or using the weather to kind of help its partners. So Arcanine obviously giving Tyranitar a little bit more leverage to kind of get those Dragon Dances up and not take as much damage from physical moves. Two Psychic partners, two pressure things that specifically target Tyranitar, and Rotom being the grass type to deal with opposing rain teams that Tyranitar can kind of mess with. So you kind of see the idea around that, right? And then on Till's team, a little bit different. Tyranitar kind of pairs nice next to Togekiss. Togekiss being able to redirect the things that Tyranitar does not like. Garchomp also being able to deal with, some other things that Tyranitar may not like. And then Cresselia, as I mentioned, is there. And then you have Intimidate from Hitmontop. Kind of the same concept. So we'll go down and we'll talk about the next one. So over here, you'll see we're looking at Fevzi's team. He is also utilizing Tyranitar. Again, very strong option here. So pretty much, it pretty much functions the same way as I had mentioned, except that this team supports Tyranitar a little bit more around the Arcanine and Gastrodon combination. And this is a very popular core, and we'll talk about this when we get into the Victory Road results. Specifically, it pretty much can cover a lot, right? Like you can kind of play it very defensively, you can cover a lot, and then you have scissored around that core. It's super nice. Then we go over here and we'll see Probopass is just kind of random in my opinion, but you'll see another Tyranitar, right? And it's kind of the same way that it was used on Till's team almost. Next to Cresselia, can change weather. You have Trick Room next to it. You can go for Intimidates. Garchomp has Sandveil potentially to kind of benefit off of that. And then you have an electric type or something to pressure rain. And you'll notice similar concept, right? You have ground type, you have Tyranitar, you have Arcanine, you have water type, and you have steel type, and then you have Cresselia, right? So a lot of these teams kind of are built the same way, and it's just a really nice support option for these teams, and like so and so on. You'll see like literally almost the same thing down here, and pretty much that's it, right? Like Gastrodon, T-Tar, whatever, like same kind of core. So the main takeaway from this is that pretty much when you consider these cores, you can see a couple of standout uses of Tyranitar, right? And we'll contextualize that first. So I'm going to actually make this the Japan versus Germany Invitational. Or not Invitational, I guess it's Exhibition, right? So let's look at the meta trends from there, right? So typically on the Tyranitars, the most common set was actually the Lumberry, Rock Slide, Dragon Dance, and Crunch set. It's just the most consistent set from Tyranitar, and you'll see this actually on a lot of teams. I mean, I'm pretty sure like every team used it. It's just a super nice option, right? The only fringe set that kind of fills the same thing is actually Focus Ash on Tyranitar, which realistically isn't going to do too much different besides obviously being able to take a hit, right? And like the difference with Lumberry is that you can kind of avoid being burned or like paralyzed, something like that. So it kind of works out. But anyways, so we'll go into the common partners that we're typically seeing with Tyranitar, right? And like the common partners or cores, common partners you'll see are like Cresselia, Togekiss, you'll see Arcanine, Hitmontop. Like it's very standard stuff, and it like makes sense, right, based on the team. Like Gastrodon, T-Tar, stuff like that. Like it's all things that are going to directly complement the Tyranitar's coverage. So Hitmontop being able to swap into things that naturally would be really difficult for Tyranitar, giving it fake out pressure. Gastrodon being able to suck up the water moves. Cresselia being able to set Trick Room, also has good resistances, the stuff that T-Tar doesn't like, and so on, right? Now, when we look at the teams that had best utilized this, you'll see that they typically either had the Arcanine Gastrodon core with Scizor, or they had Cresselia and Togekiss on them. And you can see, I'm pretty sure that's all of them, right? Besides this was an exception, but like still had the Scizor core in there, just one different water type. But like you'll see it has Togekiss, Tyranitar, Cresselia. Tyranitar, Cresselia, and then this one had a fringe like different tail there, right? And then Tyranitar, Arcanine, Gastro, and Scizor, and then you have Tyranitar, Cresselia, Arcanine. Like you'll see they all kind of filled the same ideas. So now we'll get into the Victory Road results. And the Victory Road results, you'll see that it actually typically shows this bias, right? Which is pretty much that there is a bit of a like pretty much, yeah, just Tyranitar or Rain, right? Like I think there was one difference in between the whole thing, and that was this team that didn't have either. But even that like still kind of filled out the same like Arcanine Gastro core, right? With Scizor, it just had like an alternate Mon and Breloom. But going over this pretty much, so first we'll take a look at James' version, which is probably the most, I would say it's unique, but it kind of fills that same idea of Scizor, if that may, or like Scizor, Gastro, Fire type T-Tar, if that makes sense. It was just an inversion with Rotom Heat, which actually I think was a phenomenal call for the event because it gives you something to directly pressure opposing Scizors, and you have Gastrodons, so like Rain doesn't really pressure it as much either, which is super nice. So it's like a really cool option there. And I think the main thing to keep in mind when we look at this specifically is that you pretty much have like the same support. So like Fake Out, Dragon Dance, Gastrodon, Dragon Dance, like all that stuff that you can kind of do with the team, and like another alternative special attacker that can put pressure on the other like on the other side basically, or like the other stat. So pretty much like you can put opponents in pins with like Rock Slide and Draco Meteor, or Rock Slide and Ice Beam, stuff like that. And it can make it really annoying for your opponent. Then you'll see the team that I had next to Tyranitar. Similar concept, a little bit different in execution. I think I was the only player besides Pato who used Mamoswine. And Mamoswine was really good next to Tyranitar because it pinned a lot of the things that Tyranitar doesn't like, specifically being what was it? Garchomp and Latios, right? Or not Latios, sorry. That's obviously pretty easy for Tyranitar. But pretty much like everything else, like Togekiss, that was kind of annoying for it, or could like chunk it first. Or hitting stuff like Heatran, like opposing Heatran, that could be really difficult for it. And opposing Dragon types that it didn't like dealing with. So that's like a pretty general idea of, you know, that role that Tyranitar served in the team. You'll see that out of all of them, I guess mine was a little more unique, but it kind of had the same idea with like Hitmontop being able to support it with Intimidate Fake Out. And then if we look over here, the same thing, right? You have redirection with Pachirisu, you have intimidate, and you also have pretty much like Garchomp next to it, which isn't too rare. The only thing that was weird here was no fire type and like no Arcanine or no Hitmontop, but you have another alternative intimidator, so it kind of just makes sense for the team, right? And then we get down here, and you'll see that this is pretty much probably more along the lines of like a standard team that you would expect. Tangrowth being like Akaberry redirection on this team, so you know it kind of fits in that niche. And then obviously, you know, James' team we had already gone over, but basically what this all shows is that Tyranitar is really strong in the format, specifically the Dragon Instep, because of its ability to exert pressure against a lot of common things in the format. Also, its ability to directly change the weather from rain, and I think this is huge because being able to change away rain's weather is just like really useful for your partners, right? Because how I used Tyranitar was pretty much taking advantage of it swapping in, changing the weather, and Zapdos being able to just go for like a Specs Thunderbolt and like nail something. Like specifically Ludicolo or Pelipper. And like I played a set versus Marcus and you kind of saw that, although granted he didn't bring rain, but it's like kind of that concept based on what I brought. But yeah, so that's pretty much the main idea and like what I wanted, why I wanted to touch on Tyranitar. And like Tyranitar just has a lot of strengths, both for competitive play and just if you were using it in Battle Tower because of its ability for strong spread moves, setup, and also just going for damage. So super useful, Mon in general. You know, it's pretty much able to set up, it's able to do a lot with Dragon Dance, it's able to go for crunches to hit stuff like Cresselia, bulky Mons, and it's just a really cool option. And I'm glad Tyranitar is seeing play because it's one of my favorite Pokemon, so it's cool to see it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. I just wanted to do a quick video going over this specific Tyranitar set because Tyranitar is something that popped up a lot, and we were expecting Cresselia, or I wasn't really expecting it, but a lot of players were expecting Cresselia to be good, and like Tyranitar is one of these mons that just like completely destroys it. And it's interesting because we kind of saw a deviation from what everyone expected, with no Cresselia in top 8 or anything, and then like even in these teams, like I don't think Cresselia was that much of a star. Like keeping in mind like the meta trends that are going on in the format and seeing how stuff like Tyranitar influences that is really interesting. So I thought it was something cool to update you guys on. If you guys are using it for Battle Tower, what I would usually recommend for a set is pretty much max speed. And then you could, like, Battle Tower is a little weird because, like, specific EVs don't matter as much. But, like, you could probably honestly just go for, like, Adamant max. If you were going to go for something else, then you'd probably want to tech specifically for something in the Battle Tower. But for VGC, it's a little bit different. And if you guys are interested in seeing the Gardevoir team that I had mentioned that I had used, that's already up on the Patreon. I am going to be making a team report on this team just to kind of give you guys a little bit more insight into my run and kind of explain the team's thought process. But that is going to be a little bit. And if you guys want access to the team like now, like that's the way to do it. So once again, guys, thank you for all the support as always. I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys on the next video. All right, peace.